Paul Hawken. Mysteer Media praat met Paul Hawken. Een bekend schrijver uit Amerika waar hij onder andere Next Economy, Growing a Business en The Ecology of Commerce schreef. Hij was ondernemer in de health food business en we praten met hem in Copenhagen.
Basically into health food.
No one called it. I was natural food, which is food, you know. I mean, it's so funny to call it New Age, but we just sold food that didn't have chemicals in it. So somehow that's New Age. To me, New Age food is food that is all chemicals. That's the New Age. It's not an age I want to be a part of. So our food is very traditional. So it was very conservative, actually. It was a very conservative business. It wasn't New Age.
You just looked for a better product.
We looked for an old product that nobody had improved upon. So, but I was in business for almost 28 years. Yeah. So.
Spirituality and small business or medium-sized business, is there a connection?
Well, I think there's a tendency right now to sort of elevate business into some, role that is greater than it can assume.
It was just business.
Business is the dominant institution in the world. There's no question about that. But to allow it to subsume other institutions and other priorities seems to me stupid. Business is very small in what it can and can't do, and I don't think we should project onto it qualities and capacities and abilities that it just doesn't have and never shall. It doesn't mean that individuals can't be spiritual and run a business, or it doesn't mean that a business itself can't be very socially responsible and pay attention to community and place, and it can, and I hope it does do that more. But I think we're making a mistake, to lionize business, just as perhaps we made a mistake to demonize it. I think those two extremes.
But business is, if it's a good business, it caters to people's need, isn't it?
No,
No,
not at all.
What does it do?
A good business, if it caters to people's needs, may be completely. If you're talking about needs in the sense of human needs, yes, I agree with you, absolutely. But but you can say, well, people need nice clothes. Do they need $100 suits, $2,000 suits? I mean, where does a need become a want? Where does it become desire? Where does it become greed? Where does a need become? I can't answer those questions, but just because a business thinks it's responding to human need doesn't mean it inherently is responsible, because it may meet those needs in a way that's just as harmful as the lack of those needs may be.
Now people here, like Sagi Rinpoche, are saying, well, if you would really cater for the deeper and real needs of people, your business would be successful because you just make a better product.
That's not true. I wish that was true. I think the question we have to ask is, why isn't that true?
Why are people making crap products?
No, why? Yeah, exactly. Why is it that you can make things that are so harmful, so destructive, so cheap, and do very well? I think that's a more interesting question. I mean, that's a more honest question intellectually than to say, well, if you create a business that really meets human needs and so forth, you will succeed. That's not true. That's sort of the irony and the tragedy of modern business. Mm-hmm. You can make complete junk and become a billionaire. You can.
What changed your mind? About business? I mean, you stopped being in business?
Oh, I never changed my mind about it. I mean, I grew up as an artist, and so when I went into business, my family practically disowned me. And I went into business because I wanted to learn. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the mentality, the thinking. I still don't. When I read the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, you can sort of see all of which is sacred and holy, and
they made a map of the moon, and it's not the moon.
Yeah, aspirations of human culture just crushed, in the editorial pages. So I still don't understand how such thinking could become so dominant in a culture. Do you? I don't.
We've made it a deity. Yeah. Business is, especially in America. Yeah?
Absolutely, and mostly in America. And so, I'm. That's where I go back to your original question. I'm very tentative, if not suspicious, when people start to sort of impute qualities to business that I don't really see there. And
is it a necessity, business?
Yeah, well, yes. Commerce is a necessity.
Because you make something and I make
right,
something.
And we exchange it. Right, exactly. And we don't want to be sort of a homunculus, some that does everything, because there's a kind of a selfishness in that is not good for community, it's not good for art, it's not good for growth, development, education. So we want to do different things, and that is very profoundly healthy. The exchange of those differences is healthy, and that's commerce. And at its heart, commerce is ancient and
It's always been there.
And always been there, yes. But business is different than commerce.
Although some people say that commerce is a result of specialization in people. When we were all living as hunters, then suddenly someone specialized in making spears, and another specialized in killing this kind of animal. So people started to trade.
Trading and commerce are ancient. Business is really only 300, 400, 500 years old, and it's very, very recent phenomena. And the modern corporation is really only maybe 100 years old. And the idea that a corporation could be a body, which is corporation means corporus, and have no liability for its actions in the world is a really very, very new technological, it's a social invention with profound implications. And the reason for it was that when the first the conquistadors, really the conquerors from Europe, went to the new lands, to Americas and so forth, if their ships sank, their families and their children would be personally responsible. And so it inhibited exploration and actually exploitation. So the queen or the king in different countries chartered corporations and gave them limited liability, so that if your ship sank, you yourself did not have personal liability. Now, you can understand the practical...
So this is where the words companies come from, like Verenigde Oost-Indische Companies.
Yeah, limited liability. All corporations mean limited, which means that they are not limited personally for what they do collectively. And this is the opposite of how humans have organized society from the beginning of time, which is that we've always, as communities, controlled, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, not the worst sense of the word, but modified and moderated behavior by making us individually responsible for our own acts.
Interdependence.
Yes, interdependence, absolutely.
It occurs to me that now, this day and age, our political parties have gone the same route.
Absolutely.
A politician is not individually responsible. He hides behind his party.
And it's not surprising that the main flow of monies to political parties is from business. It's not from people. And so
are you hoping that this move by Clinton fighting the tobacco companies is a good sign, or is it another political?
It's both. It's a good sign, and it's a short-term political convenience. But I think that overall we're in a profound state of discontinuity that's going to cause great confusion in politics, in business, in society, religion. And it's a 40, 50, 60-year period, because the old assumptions that informed industrialism no longer are valid. And those assumptions are that we want to make each of us more and more productive, that the idea of economic success is to increase arithmetically, if not geometrically, human productivity. Well, we've done that. It's been a big success. But the way we do that is to substitute our work with natural resources through energy, materials, metals, minerals, etc. And what's happened is that right now the scarcities in the world have reversed. What we're running out of is the resources what we have too much of as people. So we're taking what we have less and less of, which is resources, to make fewer and fewer people more productive. And so it's no wonder we have structural unemployment, we have downsizing, we have anxiety, we have all the kind of stresses that accompany such a system, because basically we've reached this sort of trap of productivity. It is pointless to make human beings more productive.
So what to do about this?
Reverse it. Reverse the relationship. I mean, what we're in this period, this discontinuity, is this long, slow, halting, awkward, but nevertheless absolutely intellectually inevitable shift from increasing the productivity of human beings to increasing the productivity of natural resources. And that's what we're doing. And the very first early stages of the environmental movement were to start to give a cost to the damage, right? And you cannot actually do that unless you understand that, in fact, those items, those those goods from nature actually have a cost. You can win a Nobel Prize, and treat nature as a free good. In fact, the Chicago School has won 13 of them, completely defying biology and the second law of thermodynamics, ignoring them completely, pretending they didn't exist, creating a little construct, which is really an ad hoc description.
Yeah, but when you talk about these things about second law of thermodynamics, you mean you can't make things out of nothing.
Not only that, but when we consume, we talk about ourselves as consumers. We consume order. We don't consume stuff. The first law of thermodynamics makes sure we know that. We can't consume anything. What we consume is structure, order, quality of how things are arranged. But the source of all order on this earth comes from the sun. It comes from photosynthetic processes. All order. This microphone, the cord, the metal, the television station, your arrival here, all of that comes through the flow of solar energy, mediated through net photosynthetic production. And so whatever we do, unless it's within balance of those flows, we are becoming impoverished. When there's few people and we had huge amount of natural resources, then it didn't matter because we could pretend that spending capital was income. We can't pretend that anymore.
Indians say, in simple terms, what you take from the earth, you have to put back in the earth.
Absolutely.
And that's a simple term saying...
They understood what we say today is the thermodynamics of nonlinearity. Okay, they understood cyclical systems, and they were very eloquent about it, very clear. They were absolutely accurate, and of course, we thought they were foolish. They're absolutely right.
We have to relearn their lessons.
We have to learn what they have known for thousands of years. Absolutely, and we have to apply it in an industrial sense. We have to apply it molecule by molecule, item by item, product by product. And to me, rather than looking at that as sort of in a gloomy way, I think that's extraordinarily exciting. It's wonderful. This is like...
It's a long process of changing the world back.
Yeah, it is. And it's creative, it's an imaginative process. But the wonderful thing about it is that when you increase the productivity of natural resources, you need more and more people. You don't need less. When you increase the productivity of human beings, you need less and less people. So if we're going to address a lot of the social problems we have today, then we have to create a sense that people are needed, that they're wanted. We have basically people, I don't know about Holland, but I know about the United States. I mean, we have millions of people who know, and they're quite intelligent, that they're not needed. We have an economy that's so brilliant and genius, it tells 20-year-old men and women that they're not required. Their services are not required. It's okay if they buy Nike shoes or,
Coming back to business then, is business also a way of helping the people around you to be useful and to feel needed?
Yes, in its highest form, yeah. And I think it shall again.
But then it becomes a tribal activity.
Very much so, but right now, what does business do? It makes people feel vulnerable.
Because it's too big, too corporate, too fascist?
Yeah, and the change sweeps over it, and all of a sudden they don't have a job. You've been there for 20, 30 years. Boom, you're redundant. So even if that doesn't happen to you, you carry that. Everyone carries that in the Western world now. The sense that they may be disvalued overnight. Right?
Is the success of people like Lee Iacocca and all those guys that are really kings and tribal leaders, and they come in a new in a company, sometimes they're hired, they go to another company, and they bring then the success with them? Is that because of the people believe in them rather than this corporate lock that...
If you ask me right now, businesses are like belief systems, and they're headed by charismatic cult leaders. And the reason you can tell a business is a belief system, there's sleep deprivation, you don't get enough sleep, you have to wear a uniform, there is a borrowed language, which you have to speak a very specific language, there are certain truths which you cannot utter in a corporation, so it doesn't have the right of free speech, right, or assembly. So you have to understand corporations more as we did an ancient cult. And
or the fascist party.
Absolutely. Which is a belief system as well. And a belief system to me is anything that creates barriers that forbid new information from coming in. That
separation between the people in and outside.
Right.
Yeah. How do we bring them down?
Well, I think that they are coming down. I think the world the feedback from the rapaciousness and the rate at which the business world is exploiting and degrading and deteriorating the natural environment is causing feedback loops, climatically in terms of fisheries, oceans, topsoil, water, ill health, environmental refugees, conflict. The feedback loops are coming in, and business can look at Shell, look at Nigeria, look at Royal Dutch Shell. First Brent Spar, and then, Ken Saro-Wiwa in Ogoniland in Nigeria, murdered, executed, for...
Yeah, but so some companies coming down, but Microsoft is coming up, and it's forcing their windows on the world, on all of us.
Absolutely, and who knows, within 3 years, Internet may actually wipe out Microsoft altogether. I mean, I'm not saying that describing the winners and losers in my own value system. All I'm saying is that the feedback is coming from the world. And that the old ways, the organization man, the 50s and 60s of this businessman, wasn't a woman then, who with a gray suit and a red tie and a white shirt.
The Peter principle of him rising.
Absolutely.
It has to go.
It's irrelevant now. And I think most corporations know that. I mean, there is a level of ferment and openness in corporations today that wasn't even there 2 years ago. And I have met with some of the very same corporations who have been bludgeoned, in the court of public opinion, and they won't say it to the outside, but inside, they're going through a very soulful re-examination of who they are. How in the hell did they get into these situations? And the fact is that, and I'll tell you a story about a very large corporation, again, I won't name it, who was a major polluter of the environment, of the atmosphere. And I met a woman vice president, and she turned to her colleagues, vice presidents, about this product. She said, "We buried our head in the sand for 9 years on this problem, and we couldn't go home and face our children." She said, "We will never do that again." So I think that there's a kind of a humanity, welling up in these businesses saying, we're human, we're mothers, we're fathers, we have to walk proudly in our communities. If we are doing something as a corporation that precludes us from doing that, something is seriously wrong. And I think those questions are being asked.
Paul Hawken, thank you. Positive thinking, but a lot of work to do for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, my pleasure.